Make sure you don't miss a thing. Go to starzology.com/newsletter and sign up. Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I am your host, Alison Price, and I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hello, Alison. It's great to be here.
So nice to have you once more. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at the 11th house.
Yeah.
We've done quite a few of the houses, but we haven't quite done them all. So we're definitely going to address that this year.
Yeah.
So we're going to be now looking at the 11th house, which is the, not the 12th, but it's the 11th.
Yeah. It's the the natural house of Aquarius.
Yes, it is.
And is it succeedent?
It is. Yeah.
Succeedent. Yeah.
So it's what that means is that it's the house supporting the angular house, and in this case, that would be the 10th house.
Right.
So whatever goes on in your 10th house is supported by what's going on in your 11th house.
Right, which makes sense because your 10th house is the house of your face to the world, and your 11th house is your house of your groups, communities, and friends. And
well, there's many topics. Let's go through them one by one. Yeah,
totally. So themes of the 11th house.
Yes.
So we've got friendships. Big theme.
And it's back in the day, it just meant people you were friendly with, but these days it's the online Facebook friends, right?
Yeah, totally. But also, since a lot of people are choosing to get married much later in life, if at all, have children much later in life, if at all, and have roommates much later in life for much longer, especially in the Western world, blah, cities, etc. Friendships have become like the family of choice.
It's true.
We see that all the time. People say that all the time. The show Friends is still incredibly popular, like decades after it went off the air.
Yes.
And all of the all the shows that are not about crime or murder or that kind of thing are about groups of friends, usually at work.
Nice.
And this is an aspirational thing. I think back in the day there were shows that were about families more so, and we still have shows about families, but they're more often now about sort of extended, like Modern Family, for example. I mean, gosh, that's a great example. Shows about friends and extended sort of groups of friends that become families in a way, and sort of people from disparate origins and disparate households, and coming together and forming sort of
this is it.
A little collective.
And even if you do have a friend group, you may have different groups of friends that don't actually intersect anyway.
Right. I remember this diagram thing that they came out with a few years ago. It was so fascinating. It was actually a study they did at college about, they just did a huge social network mapping thing of all these college students and then followed them for like 10 years after they graduated.
Okay.
And they found that there were there were 3 different types of people. One type of people have all their friends know each other. So it's just a big net, a big circle with them in the middle, and all the people around it know each other. So it's just a little spiderwebby network of people. They all know each other. Then the second kind of group was like the person was at a sort of a fulcrum, and then they had one friend group over here and one friend group over here. So it was like a seesaw, right?
Okay.
And then the third was just all these little disconnected bubbles where they know one or two people in one group, one or two people over here, one or two people over here. And they found that in college or in childhood, the ones who had that A category tended to be the most popular. Then later in life, the third group where people had those little diverse kind of pods, and they were kind of split between all these different categories, they ended up being the most successful, but maybe not the most happy. And I also kind of, it's very suspicious because, you're interviewing people who are like 30 at most, right? Like, what do they know? Yeah. And it was a very limited study. But it was kind of fascinating because there's like, you wonder, like, what kind of category am I? And I know which category I am in, but is it relevant? Is there truth to this? And does it even matter? But like as you get older, and I mean, then of course there's the digital thing where I have a lot of friends who I consider dear friends who I've maybe never even met in real life.
Wow. Internet friends.
Yeah, because I've met them through work and then continued to be friends with them afterwards, and I work remotely. Or maybe I was dear friends with them in high school or even middle school. My absolute best friend, when we met when we were 11, and he lives in Seattle. We don't see each other but once every maybe 2 years. but we, I still consider him one of my best friends.
Wow.
And so all these little separate kind of things that maybe 100 years ago you'd just like, or you'd write like epic letters to each other once a year that maybe would get lost if there was a flood or something.
Right.
Yeah, and now of course Facebook, it wants to continue to keep you.
They call them friends, but they're not really, are they?
Oh my God! I mean, I am a very rare person in that I have like fewer. I think I have fewer than 100 friends on Facebook.
Right.
I think so. Most people have like over 1,000. Tons.
And yet, of course, you don't know them. Well, one doesn't. I know particularly when I was younger, I had more friends when I was younger. The older I get, I have less friends.
Oh, definitely.
But they're more selective, let's face it.
Yeah.
But I think if you grow up and you stay in the same place and you go to the same school and then they all move together, you know everybody in your village.
Right.
You've got
village,
a different...
small town, that thing.
Yeah, you've got a different thing going on. But once you start moving around and change countries, it's...
Right. And they say there's that, it's called the Dunbar number, which is 150, which is apparently the maximum or the approximate, number of people that you can actually kind of keep tabs on as a human. Yeah. The cognitive load of calling anyone a friend or an acquaintance, despite what Facebook may have you believe, is around 150.
Wow.
Which actually makes a lot of sense.
Sounds like a lot.
Right? It does, actually. It makes it it's... And I'm thinking about all these, I always, bring it back to like science fiction tropes. It's like, why is a space shuttle crew always 7? Why are there always like 7 people on a ship in all of these shows? Like it's 7, it's a crew of 7. Why? But then if you think about how many people would fit on an actual starship, like in Star Trek or something like that, it's between like 150 and like 300. And maybe is that like what it would take to repopulate a planet? Like if they had to crash land?
They need 25 for that.
Only 25? What? That seems low.
That's what they reckon, that if all the human population was wiped out, and if there was 25 humans left, we would survive because they could procreate, but less than 25, and there's not enough
genetic diversity.
Yeah, and age gap of kids and that and women with viable wombs left.
25 seems
very low.
Know. It seems critically low. Wow.
Well,
that's interesting.
Imagine.
Yeah, so there you go. Popular science. Yeah.
Well, they can't be wrong, right? Star Trek cannot be wrong.
Definitely no. Star Trek cannot be wrong. That is 100%.
Yeah. So people, your social circle, is 11th house.
Right.
Who you hang out with, who you choose to hang out with, and
but also it can be aspirational because it is also groups that you join.
Yes.
Organizations that you are a member of. So these are not necessarily friends or people who you have something in common with, but it's groups that you join because you want to aspire to achieve something.
Okay.
Right? Yes. So it's people who, will join.
Like an astrology group, for instance.
Astrology group, exactly, which is how we met.
We met.
Yeah. Right? Or something like a political action group where you go and you protest together. You might not ever go out for coffee or drinks together, but you have common interests and this brings you together and brings you together to accomplish something and to achieve similar goals. Or like an art class where you all have
a common interest.
A common interest. A reading group or whatever.
Yeah, a book club or something.
A book club, exactly.
Or the golf club or the book,
Yeah. So, those are some themes.
Yeah. So it's like, other keywords is like your team, right? So if you play on a hockey team or a football team or... It's the same thing, which is different to the opposite, which is the 5th house, where that's where you play, but your team players live in the 11th house.
Right. Yeah, because it's a bit more serious. It's more of a commitment.
Yeah.
5th house is there's something kind of solitary to me about the 5th house, and that's probably because it's in that quadrant, that self and other quadrant. But by the time you get around to and so in the 5th house, you're creatively expressing yourself. You're falling in love. Maybe you're getting pregnant.
Yes.
You're gambling. You're you're out for recreation. But by the time you get around to the 11th house, you're making a commitment to a group of people. You're committing to holding up your whatever your end is in the team sport, or you're committing to print those flyers by next charter meeting, or write up those notes and send them around to everybody, or whatever. Make sure the coffee's like replenished, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a member of a few groups in my time. I was at a chess club at one point, I imagine, and that went on for probably 3 years, and it was kind of my Thursday night chess club. I mean, of all things,
How very Queen's Gambit of you. That's
I know, how very nerdy of me. Anyway, so that passed. But it's mainly, these days, it's mainly astrology groups. However, I am now a member of Meetup. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's a website where you can join groups of interested people.
Meetup.org. That is literally how I found the astrology group that we met.
Hey there, I'm Bellamy Young. I'm an actor and a producer. I've been working with the global humanitarian organization CARE, and I am so excited to invite you along for my new podcast, She Leads with CARE. Each week, you'll meet some incredible women who have changed their lives and their communities.
We raise our voices for people who don't raise their voices to defend themselves.
Listen to She Leads with CARE now on your favorite podcast platform. New episodes every Tuesday.
Yeah. So, because I had the meetup group. Yeah. So anyway, I'm a member now of another meetup group with here in the city where they do out and about this and that. And
Nice.
Last week I went to a trivia night, and they have things like beach cleanup and do the grouse grind, which I don't do. But there are other events where I can be part of a group where I can go. I pay my dues, I go, I participate, and I leave.
Yeah.
You know. Whereas the astrology is a bit more, I'm sticking my nose right in on the astrology groups. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Interesting.
So interesting how that group dynamic is. And really, I think you can pick and choose your groups. And if you're not feeling up to it, you will ditch them.
Yeah.
Unless you've really got a lot of planets innately in that 11th house. And then you're going to have a group in the nature of all the planets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we looked at some of the planets in somebody's 11th house, it would give some indication to the types of groups that they will be participating in.
Right. And if you have an empty 11th house, it's not to say you don't have any groups, you don't have friends. Blah,
Like
blah,
me,
blah.
I don't have anything in my 11th, but now and again.
Yeah. And maybe that just means that you have to put forth extra effort if you want to
Well, I've got
become
transits going
a
through
joiner.
there now. I've got this Jupiter that's kind of like getting me out there.
Nice. Gotta love Jupiter. That's awesome.
So do you have any planets in your 11th house that indicate the groups that you may have been a joiner?
Do I ever? I have Venus and Pluto.
Yeah.
And they are widely conjunct. You don't consider it a conjunction because they are about 9 degrees apart.
Yeah.
I consider them a conjunction because they're just so clustered up there, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
And would you say, because I know about your Pluto group, which is when the Venus want to do is this Dr. Sketchy's thing.
Dr. Sketchy's, yes. Like my art class, which was from 2010 to 2020, it was drawing burlesque dancers.
And that's the Pluto.
sitting
That's
around
the
in a bar.
sexy thing.
That's Venus and Pluto, as far as
Yes,
I'm concerned.
yes.
And a lot of the themes were very, you know, kind of dark and cool. Like we had Mad Max theme, or we had like a Planet Terror grindhouse kind of like Quentin Tarantino theme. We had all sorts of Halloween themes. And and of course burlesque has that sort of edgy quality. It's not just your soft, woman
ballet,
posing on
is it?
some pillows and she's just kind of reclining in a relaxed pose. No, these were performers who had an active. I mean, they were perfect for my kind of art, which is these badass goddesses or whatever. I loved it.
And also the dance.
The burlesque. And eventually I started going to a couple of burlesque classes and doing a couple of those performances, which is super fun.
And that was your troupe, right? We called it your troupe, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. And it's very much a Venus-Pluto thing, for sure.
It really is.
Because it combines irreverence and sexuality, but in a fun way, and in
Women.
kind of a women taking charge and being kind of, aggressive. And it's not like they're not just stripping, it's clearly they're doing this kind of like fun, historically relevant, empowering kind of take on, they're performing for you, but it's not for you, it's for them. It's very body positive, very age accepting, all different shapes, sizes, genders, blah, 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 are welcome. Yeah. So that's definitely my Pluto and Venus in the 11th house.
And even today, you're a member of these, you hang out in these areas. You do, don't you?
Yeah. I do. I really like people who are kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say like weird, edgy, marginalized people, but I wasn't super popular in high school. I went to a small kind of art school.
Yeah.
And I had friends who were, they played like Dungeons and Dragons after school.
Oh.
They were not even they were the nerds of the private school group. No offense to any of them if they're listening to this, and if you are, thank you. Wow, hi, happy to have you. But And Edmund, I mean, I'm talking, it was a tiny school. It was 120 people.
Yeah.
5th grade through 12th. It was nothing. And so my graduating class was like less than 20 people. When I'm talking about this like clique that I had in the library, we like kind of hold up, and there's like 10 of us at most, like 5 to 10 people. And, you know, there was one guy who like, these days he would be on some kind of watch list. He always wore like a black trench coat and was like a total goth who like drew guns in his notebook. And, you know, I mean, he was nothing to be afraid of, but now like, oh my God, people would freak out that he was like going to be a school shooter or something. But he had not been able to hack it in public school. Like people mercilessly bullied him, and he found refuge with with our little group of weirdos. And that's another, I think, Pluto in the 11th house code word is your own little group of weirdos.
Yeah.
So,
To which you belong. Yeah. No, that's great because you actually do have planets in the 11th house. There are clear indicators of your friends and your groups and who you're going to hang out with, right? I think it also represents your social conscience, right? This 11th house. And I do know that you do this homeless count thing as well.
I used to. They stopped it during COVID. And
But you've got Pluto in 11th. You do it. I wouldn't dream of doing it.
Yes, I take my recyclables down to the Return It Depot. You're
You
looking
do?
at me in astonishment. Yes, I donate clothes and household goods to the local thrift store. I feel terrible if I have to waste anything that could be used by somebody else. Yes, that is me. I am that person. I will never buy a book brand new if I can buy it used. I am that person.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And because this is all going down in Libra, there's not much transiting through there at the moment.
Right.
Whereas alternatively on my side, with not having anything at all in the 11th house, when a transit comes through, suddenly I'm having to go and do something, group work. And this is what I've found, because recently Uranus entered my 11th house, and so did Jupiter. And they're both there at the moment, like making their presence felt.
Wow.
And for me, it's about the community aspect of not only this podcast, but the newsletter that I'm building, where people are now continuously, this is my community. Every week I send a newsletter. Someone's writing to me. The last lady was living in Hong Kong, and she's saying, oh, this and that about your newsletter. And I'm saying, oh, this is great, blah, blah, blah. And people are every single week writing me little personal notes about our podcast and what I wrote in the newsletter.
That's amazing.
Whereas up until these two planets entered my 11th house, it wasn't happening because I wasn't doing the social community building that the newsletter has provided me.
That's so interesting.
So that's, and I wonder what's going to happen when they both move out of the 11th house. Will that be the end of that? Probably. But in the meantime,
it'll transform into something different. But you'll have that basis where you've built up your community.
Yeah. It's crazy that it's actually happening because I was originally, when Uranus moved in, I thought, am I going to start an astrology group? I thought, I really don't have the energy for that. And there's 2 already in town, as you know. Here in Vancouver, we got 2 astrology groups. I thought, well, I'm not going to do a third one. But the newsletter is the community I have created. Mm-hmm. And I'm astonished, to be honest, with the response. So anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if we look back to the 11th house as a succeedent house and therefore the support house for the midheaven, the 11th house is the income house of a business you started yourself.
Oh, interesting.
So this is, if you created an entrepreneurial business, such as a freelance artist business or a freelance astrology business, in the 10th house that you created yourself, it's not when you bought from somebody else.
Right.
So it's a business you created. The income of that business is reflected in your 11th house. And the potential income is reflected there too.
That's cool.
So if you have your own business, and which you do at the moment, and the income is there reflected by those 2 planets of Pluto and Venus, which is, that's a long story. We can dig into that. And they're both the 2 money planets. So because unfortunately Pluto's ahead, so it's not going to be easy, but it will be there.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed.
Yes. So you've got, debt and Venus. So honestly, you've got to bring some energy to it. But because you have your own business, that is the income of that business will be reflected there, apart from its own chart, which no doubt you have. Mm. Whereas when you've got transits of the 11th house, such as myself, which is Uranus coming through, which is income from astrology, and Jupiter, this Jupiter coming through has, because I don't just do astrology, I have mentioned this in the past, other areas of my life are being expanded financially, and I'm having to pay attention because previously I wasn't paying attention. But Jupiter's made me pay attention to situations where there's a greater income coming through on some side things I'm doing that is being shown whilst Jupiter's going through my 11th house. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
Alison, wake up, because it's there, and I've been missing it, and but Jupiter's showing it to me. So
that's what they always say about Jupiter transits. They only come around, once every 12 years. So if it's going through a certain house, you need to take advantage of it. It's not one of those transits that announces itself with a cataclysmic event or anything like that.
No,
it's something where you have to know and take advantage of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got these other businesses and that. And last week I got a check from Amazon US, and I thought in the mail, who does that?
What?
And I thought, good Lord, why aren't I paying more attention to this? So I have had a bit of a shift of focus since that check arrived, because that is Jupiter in the 11th house.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Interesting.
Kind of interesting. So if you do have a side hustle or you've got your own business, look to your 11th house, because planets in there and transits through there will show you the financial situation that is unfolding.
Yeah. So just talking about the 11th house broadly and the types of people who are represented in your chart by your 11th house, whether you have planets in there or not. So you want to look at the planet on the cusp of the 11th house.
The planet that rules the cusp.
Yes, exactly. Sorry. The sign on the cusp, the planet that rules it. So there are a couple of other houses that rule people in your chart.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
yes,
so the 5th house is people you're attracted to, kind of thing, or your children. And the people who you do creative projects with or you admire, maybe. The 7th house is obviously partners, business partners, and romantic, what's the word, spouses. Yeah. And then the 11th house is people you go into business with or groups or friends. And so, Associates, yes. Exactly. So people of common interests or who people that you choose to be associated with. Or people who are attracted to you because of what you do. And they want to be involved with what you do.
They want to be your friend.
Yeah, or they want you to do some kind of business with them, or they want to join your group. And if you have ever had any kind of group of more than, say, 5 people, and you've opened it up to people who are not just those you already know, there's always that one where you're like, oh God,
I do.
Why is this person here? I do. What are we going to do? How
are you going to manage them?
Yeah, exactly. So that's an 11th house thing. And the 11th house planet or sign on the cusp isn't going to tell you the type of person. It's going to tell you how you're going to deal with them.
Right.
Your approach to them.
Right.
So, yeah. So maybe if you are the kind of person who is a people pleaser, as they say in quotes, and you are constantly feeling that you have to be nice to people and say yes to people all the time, maybe look to the cusp of your 11th house and figure out why you're like that. Or if you are absolutely the opposite of that, and what's your secret, and how do you say no to everything and still be successful in life, could be your 11th house speaking. Yeah. And
of course, planets in there too are going to represent the people who want to be your friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, not everyone who wants to be your friend you want to be friends with.
Right.
And some people want to get close to you, and you just have to deal with them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's an interesting way to look at it as well, because, not everyone who, you meet on the bus, you're not going to be friends with them, even if you chat with them about the weather or you meet them in the elevator. They're not your friends. But if you've got planets there, they're going to be an indication of the type of person who's going to approach you and say, hey, I want to be your friend and I want to be part of the group and your group, as it were.
Right. Your group. Exactly. And so that, whatever that flavor of that house is, regardless of whether you have planets in there or not, is going to be how you approach or how you reflect on that personally, and what makes you, what you think of that, what that says about you personally. Yeah. What do you have on the cusp of the 11th?
Taurus.
Oh, interesting. All right.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I don't know what we're saying there. The 11th house is my biggest house because it's got Taurus, full of the whole of Gemini and then half of Cancer, so it's a big one.
But no planets.
No planets. Amazing. No planets. So, Taurus, so that indicates Venus.
It's a big, empty, luxurious house.
Well, it is, and this is what I say. And then when suddenly there's a transit coming through, and I'm thinking, oh, I need to join this group. And I actually paid to join some group last month, and I thought, I don't normally do this. And off I'm trotting and going out to as I say, to trivia evenings last week, and I'm thinking, I need to get to bed because, good Lord, it's 9 o'clock.
Well,
but
you're going to go out to meet them because you're not inviting them over here.
No, exactly. So we meet out and as a group.
Yeah.
And some people you think, oh, good Lord. But others, I made a new friend this year because of that.
Yeah.
And crazily enough as that sounds, whereas honestly last year I can't say I made a new friend.
Yeah.
But I didn't have planets transiting the 11th house. So yeah.
So everyone has the friends they want, the friends they inherit, the friends they aspire to have, and the people who want to be friends with them who they don't necessarily seek out.
Yes.
This is something we all, in our lives experience at some point.
Yes.
And I think the 11th house can tell us how we react to that or
Yes.
why we attract the certain types that we do. The
Yes.
planets there can tell us the types of people we attract.
Yes.
And as we get older and we get better at saying no and setting boundaries, the aspects that those planets or the situation of your 11th house can help you to figure out the best way to set those boundaries and to identify why it is that these things keep happening to you. If you've had like more than one stalker in your life, it's probably not because you're the most beautiful person that's ever walked the earth. Maybe you are, but
It's because you've got planets in the 11th house.
Well, it might be because of a boundary setting issue. It could also be just bad luck, but we don't,
Yes.
There are things, I mean, there are things you can do. There are ways you can approach people. There are ways that you can turn people away. And there are warning signs that you can look for. And of course, this is not a blaming the victim thing. So if anyone's thinking that, no, this is not about that. This is about, you can only control your own self, your own reactions.
Yes.
You cannot control who's attracted to you. You can't control what other people do when they are interested in you or want to talk to you or want to approach you or want to be in your life when you have decided that you don't want them in your life.
Or they want to use you to get to something else.
Yeah, exactly. So
if you're the secretary and they want to get to your boss, they will make friends with you.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, yikes. Yeah, and I mean, digital thing has just, I can't even get into that whole thing of like, the sort of predatory nature of that. Yeah. But once you actually are face to face with someone who's real and not a catfisher or, hog butcher, whatever the hell that is. Oh, God. Once we're talking about actual people who are in your life that you don't necessarily know how they got there or want them there, this is an 11th house thing that you need to find ways of dealing with if you want to have healthy boundaries in your life.
Yes. Yeah. I think if you looked at your group of friends and you have planets in the 11th house, you can say, oh, these are my Venus friends, these are my Mars friends, I can see that's my Jupiter friend. And because you're going to have the same types coming through all the time. And the type is represented by the planets there. Yeah.
And there are good things there are good and bad things about all the planets. Obviously, it's not to say that like all Saturn friends are boring and like whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not to say all the Pluto friends are gonna like
dangerous.
Yeah, dangerous. No, not at all. No. They could be exciting. They could be revolutionary. They could be deeply, deeply intellectual and transformative. Yes. And you could continually be in a state of fascination because you are having the most intellectually stimulating conversations ever.
Yeah,
and that's valuable to you because clearly you have Pluto in the 11th house for a reason. Huh. And that's not, maybe if you have those planets in the 11th house, you are not interested in people who are light and fluffy.
Exactly.
And don't care about interesting issues, right? So it's a double-edged sword. You are attracted to people who are represented in that house, but you also will attract those people, whether, for good or ill.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, as we say, any transits going through there is going to not only stimulate your 11th house by themselves, but also if you've got planets there, they will conjoin and bring things to a head.
Yeah.
So it's a combination. It's actually very interesting because friends is not one of the first things we discuss with astrology. It's normally about, the job and the love life. Right. But friends are an integral part of our lives, and it's part what makes us human, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. It's actually quite an interesting house. It's, you have to put up with your team, whatever that team is. Yeah. And take one for the team. Right. That's your 11th house stuff.
Yeah.
So how many are you going to take for the team? I don't know.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Of course, this is, we've gotten so far into the podcast without me mentioning some random TV show, but now I'm going to mention Reacher. So we've been watching Reacher lately.
Reacher.
And Reacher, it's an action show. It's whatever. If you know, you know. But he is he kind of like walks the earth and wanders around and gets himself into different situations. But he was in a special investigators unit in the army that he ran, and so they were the elite investigator unit. And they were like the most hardcore and tightly knit team, and they were all the best at what they do. And they trust each other with their lives, and they have to because they're always in danger. And 10 years after the group disbands or whatever, there's a few of them are still in contact, and it's always that thing of like that shorthand of talking to people who know you and know you would never do anything bad, but they would come for you if you were ever in danger. All you have to do is like text some like secret code that they know is you, and they're like, oh, they're on the next plane, or they're wiring money or whatever.
Imagine,
right? And this is one of those things that in this day and age of fewer and fewer of us have like an extended family close by, and so that is so aspirational, that and like the office comedy where everyone is just super good friends and everyone has their own little niche, like your Parks and Recreation, your news radio, your whatever, friends obviously. And like that sort of idealized camaraderie.
Yes.
Fewer and fewer people actually join the military nowadays in the Western world anyway. But we idealize that I would drop anything and kill for you or die for you or no man left behind kind of thing.
Yes.
We absolutely, there's something vestigial in our, primitive caveman hunter-gatherer brain that really loves that idea.
Yeah. It's well, yeah, Hollywood brings it to us too, doesn't it? Yeah.
They don't let it.
If they say you can count your friends on one hand.
Yeah.
Or one finger, depending on whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it all depends what's going on in your 11th house.
Yep.
Planets there, the planetary ruler, and of course the transits to it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Definitely. So here's another example. My mother has Jupiter in the 11th house.
Right.
And she would tell you that she is an introvert, but she is not. She is one of these people who, she was an only child, mostly. And her mother was also kind of an introvert, but was always involved in very social kind of professions. And this is, back in the 50s and 60s or whatever. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus age-wise here, but basically my grandmother was an artist in that era and a sort of a very much kind of counterculture sort of situation. And her little joke after I was born and, was around to hear these lovely stories that she had been telling for decades was that she would just lay on the beach because they lived in California and Hawaii for a while. And my grandmother would just say that she would just lay on the beach and send my mother off to make friends. And that my mother would always go off and make friends because she was so adorable and so friendly and so bubbly. And people would just be like, oh, who are you? Blah, blah, blah. And then that's how my grandmother would have a court to hold. She would have then she wouldn't have to go anywhere. And she would just be able to hold court and have this wonderful entourage of people because my mother was such a great magnet for people.
Because she's got Jupiter in the 11th house.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
So she can make friends, yeah. That's a great position.
They were both Sagittarians. They both have the same birthday, which is a whole other can of worms we're not going to get into. But yeah.
But even today, is she making friends and groups?
Absolutely. And she is back in college.
Right.
In her PhD program, she's got a whole bunch of friends. Her cohort, as they say, is
cohort. That's a word.
The cohort, yeah. This is the people who started the same year as you, and they have these quarterly meetups where they spend a week in a different city. It's either New Orleans or they came to Vancouver last October. We went to Chicago with her for the one last November, which was awesome. It was so much fun, and there's a whole thriving.
So she hangs with a cohort.
Yeah, and it's also like a not political. What's the word? Like a professional networking thing. Because if you're getting your PhD,
networking,
you are. Yeah, you're trying to find your place in the world. You're staking a claim in the professional world and kind of trying to feel out where you're going to land when you graduate. So
right.
And it doesn't. She says it doesn't really come naturally to her, but it so does. It's really funny. It's really neat because I do not have that skill at all,
right?
Whatsoever. I'm the passive recipient of attention rather than.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes. And I mean,
I do. Yeah. No,
people come to our apartment. People flock into our circle because my partner has Libra rising. My partner is a gregarious, athletic, in the service industry kind of person.
Yeah.
And he, brings these throngs of people into my life, which is awesome. Much like my grandmother would say about my mother.
Right.
that we are the recipients of the largesse of this wonderful social butterfly sort of
so
thing
interesting.
that we do not natal
Social
have.
butterfly. That's a good analogy, isn't it? For the 11th house, you either are a butterfly. Well, what are we saying? If each planet in the 11th house is a different butterfly, then Jupiter's got to be that blue butterfly that
blue morpho. Gosh,
that we use for the emoji, because it's the only blue one apparently.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got your Pluto, and that would be maybe a dark red butterfly, and the Venus would be a pink butterfly.
Yeah, and they're joined at the hip, so they're just like this weird eclipsing binary of twin butterfly kind of weird situation. But yeah, having Jupiter in the 11th house is that's really an interesting spectacular
She's
thing.
growing her social network all the time.
And it's opposite a ton of stuff in the 5th house too, which is a wonderful placement. It's creativity and all that.
And I do think networking is another key word for the 11th house. That was more an 80s word. You would network, wouldn't you, to make kind of, particularly in your career, you'd make friends with this one and that one to get up. And that's what LinkedIn is as well.
Yeah, totally.
But networking, I mean, do we do that anymore? I don't know. Maybe you do.
I think so. Yeah.
Probably, yes. I mean,
more than ever, it's just baked in now. Like, you don't even think of it as an activity. You just have to do it. You have to maintain the Facebook page. You have to maintain the LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's got to be polished, hasn't it, these days? But that's very interesting with her Jupiter in the 11th house, that's showing that she has a natural propensity to attract groups if she so chooses.
Yeah, and there's also that Jupiterian thing of it being for lofty purposes, because it's about education. It's
higher
about
education.
It's about saving the world.
What's her PhD in again?
The program is called Leadership and Change.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well then.
Right. Totally Jupiter.
Sounds so much fun. Yeah.
I know, when she tells me about her assignments, I'm like, oh my God, better you than me. That sounds terrible. But yeah, no, she's super into it.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been absolutely great. We've been looking at the 11th house. We've been looking at some planets within the 11th house. We've considered the main themes in the 11th house. We've also spoken about the planet that rules the cusp of the 11th house and its influence upon us. And we've spoken about transits that are going through the 11th house. And here we are, thank you, Jupiter going through the 11th house. Otherwise, probably wouldn't be doing this in the first place. So if you found value in this episode, please do consider sharing it with anybody who'd be interested. Make sure you're getting our newsletter, and you can sign up for that at starzology.com/newsletter. Also, make sure that you are getting Arwynne's newsletter, and you can find her at...
I'm at mspink.net. That's mspink.net. And I publish a weekly newsletter every Saturday. I am writing about art and movies and books and whatever interests me. And it's a really good read. So
Goddesses
and some astrology. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Arwynne, thank you so much for joining me again to talk about the 11th house.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great.
And it's been great. And so we'll see everybody next time.
Yeah. Thanks for joining.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer, or someone who's learning astrology, or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing. and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.